Hi and welcome back to the next video. This is video 8 where we handled some NestJS and Angular stuff. We will create like a room entity, so for the chat room, and it has a many-to-many relationship with our users. So basically a chat room can have many users and each user can have many chat rooms. So basically like in WhatsApp, whatever you know. So we create like our room entity with our many-to-many relationship to the user entity. We return if I, with a client, connect to socket.io. I want to get in return all the rooms that I'm currently in. We get this paginated, and we will do this in the next videos where we design this stuff and also make like the pagination. And we also mock like a room creation with socket.io so that we can test if we can create the rooms correctly. Then we have like our structure as always. So first we have a look at the video outcome, then we read the user story for this, and then we implement it and close it. So let's have a short look what we are building in the video. And basically we add like our room entity to our API that has a many-to-many relationship with the user, so that every user can be in many rooms and every chat room can have many users. And now we just, if we connect to our private stuff, and then we directly emit via WebSocket the rooms that I'm currently listed in. So these are coming over WebSockets. And for example, if I now log in with another user, so for example, my second user, then he is just getting displayed the rooms that he is in. So he is just in the rooms 2, 4, 18, and 19. And my first user, for example, is in all these rooms. So we just add this basically, and then in the next videos, we will also add styling to his room creation and so on. So let's have a short look at our story for this video here. So here we are in video number 8, and this is about NestJS and Angular, and we want to create our basic room entity, and we want to display all rooms for our user when we connect to the WebSocket, so to socket.io. And so the story is, as a user, I want to have displayed all rooms that I am currently listed in. So for this to achieve, we need to have a basic room entity in our backend that has a many-to-many relationship with the user entity. And we want to do the messages and room creation, pagination, styling, and so on in next video. So not in this, because this would get pretty much too long. So yeah, we basically then have a room entity which has like a many-to-many relationship to our user entity, so that a room can have many users and the user can have many rooms. So this is like many-to-many, and yeah, the messages and everything else we will add in the next videos. We have some acceptance criteria. We want to create like a new room entity with many-to-many relationship to our user entity. We want to return all rooms for the user when we connect to socket.io. So if I, with my Thomas at thomas.com, for example, log in and I get rerouted to the private module to the dashboard, then I want to get displayed all the rooms that I'm currently listed in. So we display them basically in the front-end dashboard component in our private module. So we can save this, and we can have a short look at the many-to-many relationship from type ORM. So many-to-many is like a relation where A contains multiple instances of B and B contains multiple instances of A. For example, a question and category. A question can have multiple categories and each category can have multiple questions. In our case, a user can be listed in many chat rooms and each chat room can have like many users. So this is like what we want to have. And we can make it like a unidirectional or bidirectional. So when we make it bidirectional, we have the decorators on both sides of our relation. So we will do many-to-many here and also in our then user and our room. And then we can, for example, search in our rooms repository for all rooms where, example, the user with the ID 1 is listed in. So then we can just return this. So now we can go into our code. You see we can stop Docker Compose here. We can make a new terminal and we can cd into our API folder. And here I think I just changed like the README something here. Close this. We can go into our API folder, and now in our chat module we want to create like our room entity. So we can say we have like a new folder in our chat folder, like model, and here we just create our room.entity.ts, and this should be like a basic class. And when we annotate it with @entity, @entity from type ORM, so we make it like an entity that gets persisted, then this should have an ID. This is like a primary generated column. Also from type ORM. Then each room should have a string, a name. Every room can have like a description. So we have to look later what we will all use, but I think the name makes totally sense. And we can also say here, this should be nullable true. So this can contain null values. Then we have our users, which is our user entity. We will annotate it later. And then we have like created @, which is a date. So when was this data set created? We can make this as @create date column from type ORM. And we can also use updated @, so that we can, for example, later filter when was the last time that a room where I am in was, like, for example, updated. So we can display this room at the top, but this will probably come like in one of the next videos. And now we have to map our user's entity. So we have like here a many-to-many relationship to the user entity. And we want to have like a join table so that we can query everything. And then we have to do like the same on our user entity. So we go to our user entity and we add here like the rooms. And this is our room entity as array. And then we also have here like a many-to-many to the room entity. And then each room goes to the room.users. So there is our connection. Then the next thing that we can do is we can add like an interface for our room. So we can just say room.interface.ts, and we can say export interface room interface, and then we have like an ID, number, we have like name, string, we have a description, string, we have users, which is from the user interface array. We have created @, which is a date. And we make them all optional. And we have an updated @, which is also a date. And then we can create here like a room service so that we can do all the stuff. So we can simply say nest generate service, and then we want to do this in our chat module. We want to have like a new services folder. We named it our service. And we want to have like our room service folder, and then we have our room service. So So this should create the service for us. Then you see now we have in our chat module, our service folder, we have our room service folder and our room.service. So this should then have like a constructor where we can inject our repository so that we can create sample queries. So we can say add inject repository for the room entity. And then we can say private read only room repository. And this is from type repository, type ORM the room entity. And then we can work with this here in the service. And we also have to add this to our imports. So here we have then the type ORM module.forFeature. And here we can specify the entities. And so here for this at the moment we have just the room entity. Later we will also have like the message entity and so on. And have to add this. And you see it here in our providers. We already have our chat gateway and the room service was added automatically by our CLI. So let's close this here a bit. And then we can, for example, already just try to start everything up. And let's see if this starts. And then we can create here some basic stuff like create a room, get all rooms for a user or by a user ID, so that then we can use them in our chat gateway to emit these stuff to our with socket.io to the users, so to our Angular frontend. So this seems good. And we can see if we go to our localhost 4200, we have to wait till Angular is there. This is still generating browser bundles, so we have to wait a bit. Or a bit more. So now we are here and I can, with my basic account, try to log in. And this seems to be working. So this is like the last thing from our last video where we get a basic value from our socket.io on connection. And now we want to change this. So you see it here on connection. We create like a random value to string and then we emit this. We want to change this. So we emit it here with the server. So we emit this to every connected one. And now we want to change this up. So one thing is we want to create a room. And I probably will refactor in one of the next videos all the stuff here from observables to async await, because this it makes working especially with the query builder and so on that we will use later easier. And I think it also it seems more it's in the backend it's better to work here, I think. So I will refactor this in one of the next videos. The stuff from the user module, which is still an observable sometimes, so I will refactor this. So now we can, so then we are like all even. And here to create a room, we get like the room that someone wants to create and who created the room. So we can just call it creator, and this is like the user. And here we want to return a promise for the room. And then we can say we have like a new room. And then we want to add the creator to the room, so to the users list to the room, because when I create a room as user 1, for example, I create a room with user 2, then user 1, so me, has to be added to the users list array in the room, so that I am also able to access everything. So we can make like a function here, add creator to room, where we get a room interface and creator user interface. and then we can say room.users.push, and we add we push the creator to the array, and then we return the room. So we can then say here wait this.add creator to room, and we give him the room and the creator. And then afterwards we can simply return this.room repository.save, and we save the new room. And then we can make like another function where we get like the rooms by the user ID. So all rooms for user. So we can say get rooms for user. And then we need like the user ID. That is where we search for. And we can also add like the pagination options, because for example, if we have like hundreds of chat rooms for one user, then we don't want to display them all in once, but we want to display them pageable. So first we return 25, for example. Then if he says I want to have the next page, then we return the next 25, and so on. So here we return pagination for room interface. And then we have to create a query with the query builder, because we need to join our user with the rooms to get all the rooms for one user. So we say this.room repository.create query builder for room. Then we can make a left join for room.users and the user. And then we can say we want to have it where the user.id is the user ID. And our user ID is basically the user ID that we get from here. And then we can return the paginate from the NestJS pagination typo and paginate package. And we can make the query, and we can pass in the pagination options so that we get it all paginated. So then we need to adjust our chat gateway. So here on handle connection, as you remember, we verify the JWT, we get the user, we add, or we can add the user also to our socket so that we can have access to it later. So we can socket.data, then we say user, and then this is simply our user that we get here from our database. So first we verify that the JWT is valid. Then we have our decoded token. From this token, we take the user ID, search in our database if the user exists, because we want to check if the user is already there and not deleted, for example. And then we add this to our socket so that we have always access to the stuff. And then at the moment here, we are creating like a random string, so we can remove this now, I think. We don't need this anymore. And then we can say we want to have like all rooms for my user. And then we say await this dot, I need to get the room service, private room service. So then we can say room service dot get rooms for my user, so for me, and then we have here the user.id. And then we need to add like the pagination object, and this should always be like the first page, and we should limit it, for example, to the first 10 entries. And then we can emit these rooms to this connection here, because this is just a connection. If I log in with my user with ID 1, then I'm running into handle connection, and then we want to search the rooms just for my user, so for my user ID, so for 1 in this case. And then I want to just return these rooms just to my user, so to user with ID 1 that is connected. So we can say this.server. Then we want to go to a specific socket ID that was created automatically by socket.io. And then we want to emit to this user the event rooms with the rooms. And here we can just make a little comment and say only emit rooms to the specific connected client. So our handle disconnect is still fine, disconnect here is also fine. And then we can add, like for example, something for create room. So we can add subscribe message and say create room, so that we can later in our front end call this to create like sample rooms, so that we can actually check that we find all rooms for our user. And then we can say async on create room. Then we have our socket. And we have the room that we want to create. And here we can just say return this dot room service dot create, and here we can add the room. And then the second that we pass in is the creator, so who is creating the room, so that we can add them also to the users array of the room. And here we can just access the socket.data.user, because we set it here in the on connection. In the handle connection, we set the socket data user to our user from the database that we got. So we can just use this here. And then this here should work. And now we can go like to our client, so to our Angular stuff, so that we can check if we get this to work, and that we, for example, can create a room and we can display all the rooms. So as you remember, we have our private, our public module, so very basic at the moment. We have our socket, we have our server, so we have our chat service here. And so we can modify this here a bit. So we have our get message. Then we want to have like get my rooms. And here we can just say return this dot socket from event, and then we are listening for the event rooms. And here we can, for example, get a type, and here, so we have to create also our interfaces in our front end. So first we can say we want to have like a room.interface.ts, and we also want to have like a page.interface.ts. And then we have our room. This is like copy and paste from our backend because we're using both TypeScript. We can just go into our chat, in our model, in our room interface, copy and paste. And then we can go again to our Angular, and then we have here our room interface, and we can import the user interface from here. So this seems fine. And then we also need like another interface, because when we use the paginate for all rooms in our backend, we create like a pagination object where we have like items, where we also have metadata like which page are recurring, how many items are we displaying, and so on. So we need like for this also an interface. So we say, for example, room paginate interface, and then we have our items. This is our rooms, and we have some metadata, and this is, for example, meta, and we have to, where is this? No, we don't want to use this. And then we can rename this from page to metadata, and then we can just use it here. So we say export interface meta, and then we have like total items, which is a number. We have like item count, so how many items are there. We have the items per page, so we can then later connect this, for example, with the Angular material paginator, so that we then can implement like a basic pagination to go through the rooms, or we can later reuse this here to also go through the messages from the chat. So now we feel like an interface that exactly is doing this, so that we can use it then here in our chat service. So we can say here we have our room paginate interface that we return, and we can also make something for create room. And first we have to create like a user. Let's say we create the user number 2. So he's having the ID 2, and then we have like a new room. And this could be like what we need is the name. Let's say test room, and we have to add the users, here the created user, to our array. What is he saying here? Yeah, so we have to add the user here, the ID here, and make it optional, and this should be fine. So, and then at when we have the room with the one user, and as you remember, then we just need to emit like an event that, for example, is create room, how we named it in our chat gateway here. So create room, and we have our socket where we have from here added our user data from our JWT and so on that we get from the database, and we have the room that we want to create. So here then we simply say we want to call this with our room, and then we have to use this stuff in our component, in our private module. So we go to our dashboard component at the moment and refactor this later. So we can, I think, we can remove the title stuff. And we can now add our rooms. And this is just a dollar that is like a convention for async values. So here we can just say this.chatService.get my rooms. And then we have to add the async pipe in our HTML, so in our view, to subscribe to it, because this is like an observable. So here we implement also on init. And then we can say in our ng on init, we want to call this.chatService.create room. So that we create a room if we open the dashboard component. And then in our component, we could simply display this with a mat selection list. And I think we have to import them. Material list. Angular material list. So we have to add this here to our imports from the module. So we can add this to our private module and add it to our imports array. And then we can use this here. We can, for example, say multiple false. So we just want to have one selection value. And then we have like our mat list option, and here we say ng4, and since we get like from our backend back all our rooms so paginated, so we say we want to have that room of our async rooms from our where we subscribe. So we have to say async to subscribe to it, and then to the items, because this is like where our rooms are in this paginated object. And then we could also set like the value to the room. And we could say here we want to display name room.name and ID room.id. And then we can see, I think, if everything works. Yeah, so here you see we have like a null value in our user entity. Let's see what's happening here. Yeah, let's make. So I think since we are here already on our dashboard, you see we have already created like one room. And if I make like here a refresh, let's have a quick look into our database. Because it could be that my user with which I'm being logged in, so the thomas@thomas.com, is having like the ID 2, and then if like we try from our front end where we create this stuff here with user ID 2, then he tries to add this to the room, and also me, which is probably also having the ID 2, and then this is getting some issues, so we have to add our connection here again, because I think I restarted it recently, and this is like all is in the Docker Compose file, the connection. So then we have here our server, we have our database, we have our schemas, and you can see it here. We have our three tables. So we have the room entity, the user entity, and then our join table. So let's query our user entity and see which ID do I have. Select all from user entity. And so let's see which user am I logged in. So let's maybe go to our backend, or let's add this here for user ID 3, then make like a reload here. And then you see we have now created a new room, and let's see if we have another error here. Yeah. So you see here we have failing row contains free and null. So let's have a quick look what we are doing. So let's go to our API, to our backend. And then we are here in our chat gateway, and we are on create. So let's just console log out what we get. So when we go to socket.data.user, for example, and when we have our, so let's say here, this is our creator, and then we have here like the room, and then just see what happens. So let's close this database here. So we don't have all this stuff. And then when we reload, so there's now no more error coming, but why? User.id. So the creator has definitely an ID, and the room maybe also. Let's try. So let's try it. Yeah, and you see now we created another room. We have it. We reload, then we should have our user entity is my user, and this here is our, yeah. So you see this is working, I think. Yeah, you see now we have created room 7, we have now the room 8 and so on. So this looks good. And if I'm going, for example, now again, why? So sometimes it's undefined. So I think this could be like, that we have like here some timing issues. No, we don't have any at the moment. Quite confusing. And now, for example, if I log in with, and now you see we are just getting like the first 10 rooms that we specified for the pagination. But for example, if I make like a new private window, and then I log in with the Thomas2 user, and then you see I'm just having the rooms that I created here with user ID 1. This was the first 2 rooms where we had the user ID 2 added. And this here, when you now reload, now I create here rooms with the user ID 3 and 2. And so you see for user ID 1, if I reload here, they are just together in the rooms 2 and 4, and he is here in room 18 with the user ID 3 also, and he is here in these rooms with the user ID 3. And so this here now seems to work. Just make a little bit reload and see if we don't get the error anymore. Here, so I think at the moment it works fine. If this error will come up again, then we just need to make sure maybe I missed somewhere something. Yeah, normally await should not be a return value. Actually, we can also say well, and we reload this, and then we try again. Seems to be working. If it's coming up again, we have to debug it, and then we will find the error, I think. Maybe you can already also see it, or I already fixed it later. Okay, so I think this should be all, and we can now check our user story. So we have like our basic room entity with many-to-many relationship to our user entity. If you want, we can also have a quick look into the database so that you can see like the mapping. So we just looked in the user table, but we can already have a quick look to the room entity users table. So you see we have the foreign keys. We can query this, and we can select all from room entity users user entity and query it. And then you see we always have like a room entity, the room ID, and then the user ID. So for example, the room with the ID 2 is coming here 2 times, and he is having like the user 2 and the user 1, and so on. And so don't forget, sometimes when we do some stuff here and so on, and it messes up your log images or your containers, you can just, with here are some commands and README, how you can remove the images and how you can rebuild everything and so on. So if there's something coming up, just check this. Now back to the acceptance criteria. So we create a new room entity with many-to-many relationship to user. We have now returning all rooms for the user when he connects to socket.io that's paginated, and we will build like a pagination and the design in the next videos, so that we then have it fully functional. So where we also have like a form in Angular where we can create the room, and we are not just mocking it. And we display them basically in the front end. So we also have done this. So now we can commit our changes. Can say git add upper A, git commit, and then this is video 8, and then this is here create basic room.entity and display rooms for user on socket.io connection, and we can push it.